podcast on Everyman Radio.
As governments and media continue their barrage of climate propaganda,
the National Climate Action Plan I unveiled will cut carbon pollution, protect our country from the impacts of climate change, and lead the world in a coordinated assault on a changing climate.
feeding Americans with failed predictions for man-made global warming.
And these changes are picking up speed.
Mother Nature has not heard their message as temperatures plummet across the planet.
The National Weather Service already calling this a crippling, potentially historic blizzard.
This Arctic blast is not just another winter storm.
A massive blizzard barreling down on the northeast corridor.
A growing number of climate scientists are challenging the establishment wisdom.
Not the weather extremes that's important, it's the trend lines. And trend lines are clearly showing we're heading into a cold era.
John Casey's bestseller Dark Winter explains what's at stake with the coming Little Ice Age as politicians bicker over carbon emissions.
It was never about the science to start with. It was always a political agenda.
What were you thinking? Why did you not act?
The world has never been spoken to quite this way. We've never been warned like this before, all of us, about climate change, nor have so many countries agreed quite this much on the clear and present danger it represents. Here is the takeaway. Unless the world changes course quickly and dramatically, the fundamental systems that support human civilization are at risk. This is all coming from the UN.
We've been told that Earth's climate has been changing. And for 30 years, scientists supporting the United Nations view have inserted the idea of man-made global warming into our consciousness, into our politics, schools, and even our churches.
There's one issue that will define the contours of this century more dramatically than any other, and that is the urgent and growing threat of a changing climate. We cannot condemn our children and their children to a future that is beyond their capacity to repair.
With current climate trends setting record cold temperatures, many are questioning global warming theories. And a growing number of climate scientists are seeing that global temperature data no longer shows a heating trend, and that most of the global warming predictions have failed to come true. And scientists who challenge the global warming consensus are now targeted for attack. John Casey is a highly credentialed scientist and engineer who has stood up to the establishment on global warming. He sees solar cycles as the primary driver of climate change, not carbon emissions. Casey's controversial new bestseller, Dark Winter, argues that global warming has ended and a new, more ominous threat faces humanity. A period of plummeting temperatures that's enveloping the planet that will radically change life on Earth, including political unrest, famines, mass migrations of people, and even a wave of unprecedented earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. Casey, a former White House Space Program advisor and space shuttle engineer, is the president of the Space and Science Research Corporation, a respected climate science organization. He has been a voice of reason challenging global warming propaganda, as he shows, along with a number of leading climate scientists, that the Earth has actually entered a period of rapid cooling as sunspot activity begins its downward trend. Not a member of the academic elite, Casey's scientific, real-world credentials set him apart.
According to NASA and NOAA's own science data and their satellite data that we monitor, the Arctic and the Antarctic are both getting colder. Sea ice is growing rapidly, and so the reality is quite different between what the warmists have predicted and what is really happening with our climate. This is even more graphic when you look at the relational cycle theory and what it predicted. For example, we predicted that the global warming would end between 2007 and 2010. We had a news conference in 2008 to announce that it had in fact already ended, that a new cold era had begun. All of the predictions then, and there are many from the Space and Science Research Corporation and other global cooling researchers, have in general come to pass, whereas most of the major predictions from the UN and even our own US science agencies in the last 6 years have failed utterly.
Al Gore, President Obama, the UN, and other global warming leaders, rather than admit their predictions have not come true, have chosen to attack the very scientists who have been proven right and have stood up to global warming narratives. Dr. Willie Soon of the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics studies the impact of solar cycles on Earth's climate. Dr. Soon receives funding from the fossil fuel industry for his research because scientists backed by global warming funding have cut him off.
The sun, of course, in terms of its light energy output, is probably the only true external driver of the Earth climate system, because there is no other forces on Earth that would supply that amount of energy for the air to move around, the ocean current to move around, or trees to grow. So there is no doubt that the sun is the main driver and supplier of energy to the Earth weather and climate system. They are clearly promoting the vision that if we do not cut our carbon dioxide emission, disaster, crisis, whichever bad connotation you can find, will come to Earth. So it is that kind of alarmism that appalls me as a scientist. There is no one in the world who would insist that everything is having to do with the sun. All we are trying to do is that there's this plausible picture of how the sun could cause some of the changes in the climate system. Why not study it carefully? It's very, very difficult, in my opinion, to try to insist and suggest that carbon dioxide, even as of today, when we emit this carbon dioxide, is going to drive the climate system. It's a complete false picture.
Climate change or climate variation occurs all the time, as it has for millions of years. These changes in climate are produced by, we believe, changes in solar or solar system gravitational field and energy output from the sun. As a result, we have studied, and I specifically have studied, a family of cycles that do cause this climate change. That includes a 206-year-long cycle, which is the one that is changing over now and ended the past global warming and has begun a new cycle of global cooling.
In January 2015, President Obama declared 2014 to be the hottest year on record, despite recent revelations that data he used is flawed or fabricated.
2014 was the planet's warmest year on record.
As the debate today rages over man-made CO2 and its link to global warming, and despite claims of 2014 being the hottest year ever, there has been a problem. Analysis reveals that for the past decade, global temperatures have, in fact, stabilized, and that some areas of the planet are actually cooling.
We've heard in the State of the Union address from President Obama that 2014 was the warmest year on record. Is that true? Is that accurate? Certainly the global warming camp will go along with that. I mean, this is the President of the United States making this statement. But on the scientific community side, those of us who follow temperature measurement and temperature trends know that the President wasn't accurate once more in his proclamations on climate change. 2014, according to 5 major global data sets that we follow on global temperature, both atmospheric and oceanic, says that it may have been the 3rd or 6th warmest in the last 15, but was clearly not the warmest. What we've been told for quite some time now is that climate change of any kind is caused by mankind. That is a modification of what used to be called man-made global warming. When it became apparent that the Earth was cooling, that climate terminology shifted to just climate change, and in my opinion was simply a political co-op to include virtually any change of climate somehow being blamed on mankind. It is more a political definition than a realistic one.
A review of the 5 major global temperature data sets, records for the last 18 years, are far from conclusive that global warming has continued despite what we are being told.
The idea of science is you're really supposed to be skeptical. So there's always a quest to verify what we know, to understand that we haven't made a mistake, and that we continue on and develop science. And if we've closed our mind, if we close the doors, we are now shutting ourselves out from the real truth, which is what science is all about after all.
How did global warming become a global obsession? A Hollywood storyline was not a bad way to start. In the next segment, John Casey confronts the conventional thinking on climate change.
It's pretty rare that you'll encounter somebody who says the problem you're trying to solve simply doesn't exist. Today's Congress is full of folks who stubbornly and automatically reject the scientific evidence about climate change. They will tell you it is a hoax.
Anyone who confronts the dogma of the day will find out that, like all other prior instances in history, you get ignored first and then you get attacked.
It's pretty rare that you'll encounter somebody who says the problem you're trying to solve simply doesn't exist.
And it has always been a confrontation between establishment science and the mavericks that come along that say, hold it a minute, you need to consider something else.
In recent years, a handful of intrepid climate experts began seeing inconsistencies in the data supporting the global warming theory. Though all of these scientists agree that the planet had been warming for the past 200 years, the most recent climate data indicates the Earth's warming has stopped, and temperatures are now either stable or cooling.
One member of Congress actually says the world is cooling.
Recently, Britain's Telegraph newspaper headlined the biggest science scandal ever. The paper reported that scientists had been caught tampering with recorded temperatures, from ones that showed a clear cooling trend to that of a warming one.
There's also a summary for policymakers. It's put together by policymakers, and in many cases they go back to the scientists and say, can you change the science document to match our summary? We want to beef this up. We want to make it look worse. That's not the way science is done. What we have to remember is climate changes and climate fluctuates. And really, while we think humans have an impact on our environment, which we do, the global climate system is still far too complex to be simply affected by one change in one small component of it.
Climate experts like Dr. Legates and John Casey think many experts are cooking the books. Climatologists challenging the global warming consensus believe the scientific data proves them right and shows that the sun's sunspot activity plays a much greater role in the Earth's climate than man-made carbon emissions. After years of research, Casey has published his book, Dark Winter, based on his relational cycle, or RC, theory. He says records of temperatures and atmospheric CO2 during the past 650,000 years indicate that Earth's temperature always rises first, followed by a rise in carbon dioxide by several hundred years.
A warmer Earth gives birth to more vegetation, which in turn has a more active carbon cycle. And so as a result, carbon dioxide may in fact follow the temperature change as opposed to being a leading indicator.
Published papers clearly shows that it is always the temperature rises first by at least several hundred years to a few thousand years. And then the carbon dioxide curve responds and it follows. So it is a very clear scientific consensus on this issue.
It's very important to understand that we were, in fact, in a state of global warming right up until the middle of the 2000s. But then it stopped. It stopped because the sun stopped it. It stopped on the sun because the sun's 206-year cycle reversed direction, from warming to cooling. That's the big picture. It's nothing more complicated than that. And for those of us who follow the sun, that's why we're so encouraged with the reliability of these solar cycles. And I encourage everyone who used to believe the man-made global warming story, like I used to believe, to look into solar cycles, to look at solar activity, and for sure, for the next few years or few decades, please follow what's happening with the sun. And here we have the Northern Hemisphere, the tropics, and the Southern Hemisphere. Northern Hemisphere has been, as you can see, the 2003 to 2007 period where the peak occurred. It's been meandering, no change. Now see, this is what we were talking about. This is the secondary peak in the current 11-year solar cycle, which is more powerful than the first peak. Now, what that represented, unbeknownst to most people studying climate, is that the sun is sending us a signal that it's about to go into deep cold phase. This is a crucial signal from the sun that absolutely no one in the mainstream media is aware of. And in fact, most people in the scientific community are not aware of. But it's one that I found and wrote up the significance of this important event in the last Global Climate Status Report. But this is the crucial signal that we've been waiting for all along.
In the next segment, John Casey reveals how politicians have forced scientists to conform data to their global warming agenda.
Make sure you get your copy of John Casey's bestseller, Dark Winter, available at bookstores everywhere. Or check out our free offer at newsmax.com/darkwinter.
Millions of Americans are turning to Newsmax TV on DirecTV 349, Dish 223, and Verizon Fios 115. Online at newsmaxtv.com, Roku, or Google TV. With our free app from your iPhone or Android. So watch Newsmax TV now.
You're watching a Newsmax special with climate expert John Casey about his new bestseller, Dark Winter, How the Sun is Causing a 30-Year Cold Spell.
In 2007, with the help of Al Gore's Oscar-winning documentary, An Inconvenient Truth, global warming was catapulted onto the national and international stage. From the United Nations General Assembly in New York to the halls of Congress, global warming adherents have been sounding the alarm with scenarios of impending global chaos.
We've seen celebrities and prominent politicians like former Vice President Al Gore step up to the plate, issue a movie called Inconvenient Truth. He received an Oscar. He went on to receive the Nobel Peace Prize, along with Dr. Pachauri from the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, for creating awareness of this threat of man-made climate change caused by CO2.
Faced with record cold winters now engulfing the planet, global warming theorists still won't change their conclusion that human-produced CO2 emissions are responsible for global warming, and that by the year 2100, a disastrous overheating of the planet will force wildlife species to the brink of extinction, melt ice caps and glaciers north to south, pushing sea levels upward, soon overwhelming us, flooding New York, Miami, San Francisco, and other major coastal cities around the world, as numerous and more destructive hurricanes were predicted to strike, and that the Arctic would be ice-free by 2013, and that global warming is not only real, but that it has been caused by human activity, and the United States economy is the leading villain. But none of their dire predictions have come true, yet they insist on massive government regulations and taxes on anyone using carbon-based fuels.
If we step back and we look at the big picture on this climate debate, we see that there are actually three groups involved. The first group is the best known. It's the one that's the man-made global warming theory caused by industrial greenhouse gases, primarily CO2, from our industry plants. This group is best known by the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the UNIPCC, and its periodic climate reports that espouse the greenhouse gas theory and say that the world is in danger and at great threat because of mankind's CO2. What we have found out since then is very different. And as a result, a second group has formed to oppose that first group. That first group also added President Obama in more recent years, a primary advocate for greenhouse gas and man-made global warming. We see that this second group opposes that first group. They have in fact done a great deal of research and come up with scientific rationale to show that the fundamental science of the greenhouse gas theory simply is not that important in climate change. But there is a third group. The third group is the one to which I belong and other scientists and climatologists around the world. We believe that the first two groups are really done a great job on the debate, but we need to stop the debate. And the reason we need to stop is because the sun is in fact the primary driver for climate change, and the new change, the new cold climate produced by the sun demands that we all start getting prepared. We don't have much time left. I think it's important to understand that the vast majority of people are simply too busy with day-to-day life to really look into the question of what's causing climate change below the headlines of the news media, below the words from the news anchor on the evening news. What I have come to learn, the most important issue that we all face, is really how do you differentiate? What do you believe? Another example is the melting of the sea ice in the Arctic. We've heard many people predict when the Arctic would be absolutely ice-free. It never happened, of course. Other scientists from our own government agencies predicted it would be gone by 2013. That never happened. We were also told that ocean temperatures and atmospheric temperatures could only go up. Well, what's the reality? We now know, after decades of global temperature tracking, especially during the satellite era, with very accurate data, that ocean temperatures actually stopped warming in 2003 and have been essentially cooling or stable since then. Who can the average person on the street trust when it comes to whether we're warming, whether we're cooling, and what data to use? If we look at the many predictions made by the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, our own U.S. scientific establishment, we see that they've made many predictions that have never come true. For example, the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has predicted that global warming over the last 15 years should have increased by 0.8 degrees Fahrenheit. It didn't even come close. The actual temperature measurement was 0.09 degrees Fahrenheit by one data set, and even colder than that by other data sets. The track record of the global warming community is a terrible track record, with error rates 90 to 300%, with major predictions like melting sea ice and glacial ice that simply haven't happened, with ocean temperatures and atmospheric temperatures that have stopped warming and now gone to cooling. So clearly, the solar physics community, the global cooling community, has gotten this one right for over a decade now.
Now, those of you old enough to remember Beatlemania or the Bay City Rollers, or perhaps more recently the Beliebers, you'll know that teenagers can get a little hysterical. Usually it happens in a crowd, but sometimes it can happen on a podium.
You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words, and yet I'm one of the lucky ones.
This girl, of course, should be cared for rather than paraded around, and she might want to meet some disadvantaged kids from Somalia, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, or even outback Australia before she talks about stolen childhoods. But sadly, many people seem to be trumpeting their moral superiority by taking her seriously, or at least pretending to. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau met with this 16-year-old who says people are dying and the world is being destroyed. Even still, Greta Thunberg complained and said Trudeau wasn't doing enough. You've got to feel sorry for Trudeau. Here's a bloke who once turned his whole face into a carbon sink, his legs too, and the climate alarmists still don't think it's enough. One day, probably after he leaves politics, Trudeau will realise there is no appeasing the apocalyptic Green left. Still, he's not the only person taking Thunberg seriously. Journalists and commentators who routinely demand we debate facts and science have been lionising her.
Yeah, amazing speech, amazing package that was put together there as well. Where do people like Greta come from?
I know, it's funny you say that. When I was looking at Greta, I was thinking there's so much just to be so depressed about. And then you see her seeing the kids at the rally, and I was like, how soon can they vote? How soon can they be our leaders? Like, they are our future. At least they get it.
It's interesting because she does present this as a war. It's us against you. And we will not forgive you. I mean, this is from a place that we haven't heard people speaking before, don't you think?
But it's also not just it's a war. It's like, it's a war and we're going to win it. You can choose to stop this being a war by getting on board right now. If not, it's coming for you, which is incredibly bolshy. And that's what gives her the power, I think.
Wow, a teenage war we can believe in, hey? Now, the ABC in Newcastle asked listeners to compare Thunberg's speech to Winston Churchill, Martin Luther King and JFK. The Guardian's Richard Flanagan compared her threatening spiel to Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. And in the Sydney Morning Herald, Mitchell Adams was lauding Thunberg as a true leader by every definition. I assure you, I am not making this stuff up. These are real live examples of real live adults reacting to the overwrought climate catastrophist.
The climate change trans counseling sequence. Are you going to stay indoors and play video games all day? Come on, I thought you had school. Mom, school's been canceled. I'm concerned about climate change. Well, don't you have some protest you can go to? We've got people coming over. We need the PlayStation. Fine, whatever. Where's my stupid sign? Climate, 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 please don't change. Climate, 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 please don't change. Facts, facts, go facts. Hey, Skylar. Hey, what's up, Tyler? I thought you were going to skip this stupid protest. Yeah, I wanted to. God, I'm so bored. I wish we could go to school. That'd be cool. Reading books, learning stuff. Yeah. Anyway, back to work. Climate, climate, climate. Please don't change. Climate, come on, put some feeling into it. Climate, climate, climate. Please don't change. Climate, climate, climate. Please don't change. Okay, thank you, thank you, thank you. It is wonderful to be here today. Wonderful. It is amazing. What you young people are doing here today is nothing short of a protest. Now, I am a teacher. Don't worry, I'm one of the good ones. You don't see me teaching today, no. Because I'm down here in the trenches with you, fighting alongside you, because I too care about climate change. I'm always surprised as a teacher that I have so much to learn. And I think I would have to say, I think my greatest teachers are my students. I learn so much from my students because my students are my greatest teachers. And I would say that my students, their greatest students are their teachers. Well, not all their teachers, because some teacher students who are students to their students don't want to learn from their student teachers. I'm not naming any names, but Donald Trump. Donald Trump. But we need to teach those teacher students. They need to learn from their student teachers. If not from teachers teaching like teachers, then from students teaching like teachers. Because teachers are the students' greatest teacher for teachers. Because they can teach us. They can teach us that need to be taught. Those that teach themselves are their greatest students and the greatest teachers in one student-teacher sort of hybrid. Sorry, I just made myself dizzy saying that. I'm going to get down there with you guys right now and turn it over to your next speaker from America, Senator Ron Dallas from Nebraska. Thank you, thank you. What you young people are doing here today is nothing short of a media event. Well, that was going to come later, and that's good, though. We've got a plant in the audience, a shill, but just a little bit later. Hang tight. He's not a heckler. He's got a line, but it's just a little bit. Jump the gun, but wait. Wait till I say military. We have this happen sometimes on the campaign trail. What you young people are doing here today is something absolutely amazing. And I think it's a shame that those of us who should be leading are following instead, and those who should be following are leading. Because we leaders are the greatest followers of your following. Well, not all leaders. Some leading leaders, instead of following the following, are leading. I'm not going to name any names, but Donald Trump, Donald Trump, yeah. It's a bit like that student-teacher, teacher-student thing. That student who was teaching about the teacher teaching him taught us. Now, what we are engaged in this war against climate change is a war. And I know a little bit about war. I've served my country in the military. I know all about the military. I served my country in the military. What did I do in the military? I was very good. What did I do in the military? I was a counselor for transgender soldiers. I don't often talk about it. I saw a lot of horrible things, but if you are interested, I did sell my story to Hollywood. They're going to turn it into a motion picture called Hormones on the Front Line. Okay, Charlie's in the bush, okay? Be very quiet. We don't want another ambush. Here we go. No! We got a transgender soldier down the front line. We need hormones on the front line now. How's it looking, Doc? I'm not gonna lie. It's pretty butch. No! Sorry, I had a flashback. My name is Senator Ron Dallas. When my parents named me Senator many years ago, it was their hope that one day I would grow up to become a doctor. Well, I went my own way, just as you young people are going your own way. And my own way is to follow you in your own way because I, too, am concerned about climate change. Yes, I am. Now, I just want to say real quickly before we introduce the 16-year-old child prodigy, Greta. I just want to say that I know a lot of you young people are concerned about your future. My brother runs a profitable oil company that has recently started to diversify into building wind turbines, so if you want to hand me your CVs, I'll make sure he gets them. Also, November is election time, so don't forget I'm Senator Ron Dallas, and this November I want to be Congressman Steve Johnson. Help me become somebody else. So, now, as much as we Americans might want to take the credit for Greta Thunberg, I think the Brits got to her first, so I'm going to turn over the honors to our friend from MI6, Sir Humphrey Standard. What you young people are doing here today is nothing short of something very well coordinated. To the untrained eye, looks spontaneous. As a former member of Her Majesty's Secret Service, of course, I'm obliged to keep the strictest secrecy. So whatever I say from this podium to this gathering must not exceed the bounds of Marble Arch. So, shall I trust you in secrecy? Shall I? Yes. Then be forsworn. Over the past 10 years, those of us in national security have grown increasingly concerned about knife crime, jihadi terrorism, the perennial grooming gangs. But we've grown increasingly concerned that people aren't concerned about climate change anymore. And therein lied the match that struck the spark, that created the flame, that became known as the Greta Thunberg Project. Now, Britain did not do this alone. As we know, Britain can do nothing alone. Britain can do absolutely nothing on its own, especially England. England, bound in with the triumphant sea, whose rocky shore beats back against the envious siege of watery Neptune. Now it is bound in rotten parchments and inky blots, a slave unto itself. England, that was wont to conquer others, is now a shameful conqueror of itself. Wrote Shakespeare, ironically, about what would eventually become the European Union. And real quickly, I must remind you young people to get out there and get active. We need a 12th referendum. And we promise this will be absolutely the last. No returns, touch wood, no, the absolute, we swear, that no more 12 and we're done. You're watching BBC News Future. I'm Lubaba Willowick. The date is 14th May 2045. Tempers grew heated today in Parliament over a debate about the 12th referendum over Britain's exit from the European Union. The MP for Folkestone and Hythe spoke earlier. May it please the right honourable members, myself, along with most of my constituents, are triskaidekaphobics, which means we have a fear of the number after 12. So much so that we won't even utter it, and if we do hear or see it, we must say seven times. This notwithstanding, if there is a 12th referendum, who's to say that there won't be a number after 12 referendum? And that would be bad luck for us, who are not only triskaidekaphobics, but also Brexiteers, and we think that that would be the one that the Remainers would finally fucking win. the inspiration behind the hit musical Everybody's Talking About Jamie, about a northern boy in a small town who wanted to wear a dress to his high school prom, is about to get another inspiration. Kathy Ridgemont is in the north. The north. Bleak, desolate, sorrowful, miserable, drugs, guns, murder, working class. It's also the home of Jamie Campbell, the 16-year-old drag queen, all now grown up. I'm so excited. My dad's got 6 months to live, and I've always wanted to wear a funeral dress. So I can't wait till he dies. I'm going to wear a cheongsam dress, you know, little China girl dresses. I'm going to eat a tiramisu in the front pew at my dad's funeral. So far, he's kept his secret between himself, the BBC, and his fat, ugly mum. I don't know why my dad left my fat, ugly mum. She's so fat and ugly, but I love her because she's so tolerant and understanding and accepting and fat and ugly. With only 6 months to go before his dad dies, Jamie is looking for dresses. I don't like that, I don't like that, ooh, I don't like that. I'm so nervous, what if he lives? Then I won't get to wear my cheongsam dress and eat tiramisu in the front pew at my dad's funeral. The big day is finally here. His dad is dead and about to be laid to rest. Father in heaven, we commend our brother to you in... What the Christ is that? Oh, don't mind me. I'm just here mourning my dead dad in my cheongsam dress and eating a tiramisu in the front pew of his funeral. Right. He is survived by his son. No, not quite. By his daughter. No, not that either. By his gender fluid no, I'll give you a clue. It's about the monarchy. I'm a drag queen. Okay, listen, Sonny Jim. I happen to be the last believing vicar in England. So either shut your lipstick gob or fuck off and wipe that sparkly shit off your fucking face. That man does not pay his license fee. And now, the BBC News Future takes a look back at 5,000 years of LGBT history. Tonight, the takeover of Wandsworth Town Library by a group of American gay men in the year 2035. We had some friends in Wandsworth, and this was it was a few months before Pride. Or, no, it wasn't Pride anymore, they changed the name, it was Arrogance. Yeah, well... Well, I think they thought by the time you're wearing GIMP animal outfits in front of the Metropolitan Police and getting selfies, it's kind of like a little bit past that. Anyway, so my friend said they have these wonderful old pictures of Wandsworth Town in the foyer. And I said, not really interested. Do they have an LGBT section? And she said, no. And I'm like, oh, great. Got to do something about this. We need an LGBT section in that library. So I rang up Papa, and Papa was on it. As soon as he became librarian, the whole thing changed. Okay, I'm Papa. Let's get to it. Okay, what do we have here? Come on, Arrogance is coming up. What do you have? What is this? Oscar Wilde. What is that to me? Importance of being earned. I don't care if he wrote the holy fucking Quran. Was he gay? Okay, take his fucking face, put it on the felt rainbow. Come on, guys, stop wasting my time. Let's go. What is that? Robert Graves, gay or straight? Okay, on the fucking rainbow. Let's go. Okay. George Orwell, do not waste my time, please. Okay, you, here's what I need from you. I need a headless male mannequin in a Carmen Miranda dress, okay? And I want lots of little trans counseling, free trans counseling leaflets all around that. And by the way, where the fuck are my trans counselors? I asked for these 2 weeks ago. Look into that. I'm gonna see what this hobo wants. Yes? Sir, I'm just drifting through town. Just trying to get enough money to, well, hell, get a bowl of soup and a crust of bread, sir. Just want to see if you might have any work I might try my hand at. Look, this depression has hit us all. I'd love to help, but I just can't. Sir, I've not worked in going on 6 months. I got mouths to feed at home, sir. I can do anything, sir. I can chop logs, I can slop hogs. Hell, I can raise a barn, I cook, I clean. Can you do any trans counseling? Well, I don't know, sir. I'll tell you one thing, sir, I'll be willing to try. Okay, you're hired. Come on. Here's your desk, here's your chair, there's their chair. Okay, real simple. They're going to come in. Just woman is man, man is woman, basic confusion. Okay, just do something witchy on them, okay? You ready for your first one? I'll send them right in. Are you my counselor? Yes, I am. Sometimes I put on my mama's bra and rub up against a pole. Maybe you want to cut your pecker off? You're the kindest, most understanding doctor I've ever known. Is that dirt on your fingernails? No, it's nail polish. I thought there was something special about you. Thank you, doctor. No problem. Have a good day. Send in the next one. Hello. So, how are you doing? Pretty good. I'm living the authentic me. It's wonderful. I got a great new job. I'm doing the anchor for the BBC News Future. And in fact, I'm still working right now, so I'm going to talk to you later. The climate, it's 2045 and the Earth is still here. Something that climate change activists said would never happen. But a recent climate change activism study shows that the fact that the Earth still is here still proves that it's climate change. See, we said it was going to not be here, but then it's here. Like we said it was going to be warm and it's cold because that's like change, right? Climate change, hello. So this is a scary sight. What we're calling for people to do, okay, no more flights, no more cars, no more trains, no more food, no more air, and just die. If we're not willing to lay down and die as a people, there is no way the human race can survive. It's 2045 and we're still here and we can still make a difference, okay? Because what you young people are doing is amazing. We must get out there. Don't forget, ask for a 45th referendum and we promise we swear it's the ultimate, top secret ultimate, this will be the 45th one. Now, we promise you Greta Thunberg and we're going to give you Greta Thunberg. But again, Britain did not do this alone. It was a transnational affair. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Heimlich Maneuver from the European Union Committee on Staff. The question was simple. How to take the concerns about the climate and wed it to the fad of mental health awareness, all under the rubric of the youth movement. And that's when the answer came to us. With a little bit of pigtails. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the Greta Thunberg. Mommy? Where are you, Mommy? I see a light. So we have a set on Poltergeist. 1 second. My name is Greta Thunberg. When I first heard about climate change, sorry, I can do it this way. When I first, she doesn't need the microphone. No, she doesn't, no. When I first heard about climate change, I could not believe more people were talking about it. I saw a woman talking about her dead son. I said, why are you not talking about climate change? There should be a lipstick called climate change. So it will always be on everybody's lips. I come from Sweden. Has anybody been to Sweden? Well, Sweden is the Mecca of, well, it's just Mecca. That was a little joke. When I first heard about climate change, I could not eat. I could not sleep. I did not want to go to school. What was the point of learning my ABDs and 2 + 2 is 5 when I have climate facts? Also, I have autism, which means Having autism means the whole world must revolve around me. But if there is no world, I will have to revolve around myself. This is not Greta. This is the hand. My hand. You will have heard of Greta, but you will not have heard of me. I am Beata Thunberg, Greta's younger and less famous sister. Greta was supposed to be at this climate change conference, but she met with a terrible accident. And we hope she gets better. Better Greta. Like Greta, I too am concerned about the facts about climate change. But I'm also concerned about the facts about Greta. Greta says she is autistic. I am autistic too. But she went to Dr. Hufengelfen. I went to Dr. Heinfenfeinfen. So I am more autistic than her. This is not a bash Greta thing, this is about climate change. Greta also said that she stopped eating after she learned about climate change. So did I, 3 days before Greta stopped eating. She said, "Why are you not eating?" I said, "Climate change." She said, "What is that?" Anyway, I don't want to bash Greta. Greta, how did you get out? I know what you did. How did you escape? Why did you put me in the boot of a car? You know I hate cars. Look, get out of here. No, get away. Go. No, stop. No, stop. I'm not Greta Thunberg. And I'm not Beata Thunberg. My name is Will Franken. And I wasn't supposed to be here at this climate change conference. But I snuck in because I want to be here because I'm going to tell you something. You guys are being fleeced. You young people, your youth is being sold out from under you. You're protesting for more taxes. Don't you see? This is bullshit. This is bullshit. This is bullshit. I'm being silent.
When discussing climate change, it's important to focus on the hard data and not just be tempted to laugh at the insane behaviour of climate change activists. So I'm going to discuss hard data. But not before I laugh at the insane behaviour of climate change activists. I mean, there's just so much material. Because when you're trying to communicate the serious, sober, dire straits message that the Earth is in peril, what better way to do so than this? Well, I was a bit skeptical before, but that's me convinced. No, wait. Now I'm convinced. If only we could figure out a technological way to harness the power of crazy to replace fossil fuels, because Jesus Christ, it's in plentiful supply. Then there's this guy. Another fountain of rational credibility. But get this, they arrested him when he was about to save the Amazon.
He's here to save the Amazon!
Amazon's fucked now, press F to pay respects. Then there's this guy.
I'm just a father of 2 children that's very frightened of their future.
Imagine turning on the TV and seeing your dad crying because of the weather. Psychologists are warning about a new trend of eco-anxiety amongst children. They're literally terrifying kids into believing that their parents and all their friends are going to be dead in 12 years.
100 years ago, weather-related disasters killed 500,000 people a year. Today, it's 20,000 a year. A reduction of 95%. It does not lead to a death of billions. I mean, aren't you scaring people with this rhetoric, aren't you?
Alarmist language works.
Then there's this. Fuck is that? Go clean up a beach or something. This isn't a protest. This isn't taking action. It's a social occasion. It's Burning Man on Thames. It's a bunch of sanctimonious, privileged, posh twats lecturing working class people on why their living standards should be reduced even further. Hundreds of middle-class vegans occupying Smithfield Meat Market, preventing ordinary working people from doing their jobs. Then going to McDonald's for their lunch. Why are they coming to demonstrate against us, possibly putting us out of work? Asked one worker. Because of this happy-clappy mob, I'm not going to be able to pay my bills. Bravo, guys, bravo! Elitist smug snobs putting working class people out of work, out of business. So liberal, so progressive. When you start to resemble the aristocrats from the Hunger Games, you've probably stopped representing the interests of working class people.
May the odds be ever in your favour.
There are literally mass riots in major Western countries like Holland and France because working and lower middle class people are having their livelihoods destroyed by climate taxes. In France, the Yellow Vest movement began partially as a revolt against fuel tax hikes. In Holland, the Boeren protest began as a revolt against environmental regulations on livestock, both of which you lot support as you jet off to your daddy's ski lodge in Stad while pontificating about how much you care about the little people.
The best thing you could do is to change your own bloody lives and stop telling the rest of us how to change ours and demanding change immediately. You're a bunch of self-entitled wastrels. Get back to whatever work it is you're supposed to be doing and stop being a pain in the arse.
Then there's the giant waste of taxpayer money and resources. Knife crime in London is at a record high. People are being stabbed to death every day. Oh, but I'm sorry, we need 9 police officers to escort this giant pink octopus out of the area. Then there's the sheer, unbridled, rank hypocrisy. And listen, I know everyone's a hypocrite to some extent. I know none of us can lead the perfect life in line with all our beliefs. But Jesus Christ, there's more hypocrisy on display when it comes to climate change activists than if Matt Lauer turned up at a women's rights march. A diesel generator. Seriously, those wooden panels aren't really muffling the noise, are they? Surely you didn't use them to try to hide the diesel generator pumping out God knows how many pollutants? Surely not. Take these 3 clowns, all of them wearing Extinction Rebellion badges to support the cause. Stephen Fry. Do you think his eco-awareness began before or after he took a big fat cheque to front an ad for Heathrow Airport?
Now that you've landed at Heathrow, let me be the first to welcome you to this happy island we call home.
The UK's biggest, most polluting airport. The airport these Extinction Rebellion activists are always trying to shut down. So eco-friendly. Then these 2 idiots, Olivia Colman and Azim Chowdhury. Both were paid by British Airways, the UK's biggest and most polluting airline, to appear in an ad that is played before every single BA flight.
After the success of last year's in-flight safety video, lots more actors have been in touch with me being like, Chibati, please let us be part of the sequel.
Thank you, darling. Cappuccino, you have 4 sugars?
Actually, I've come to read for the audition.
So all 3 virtue signal about reducing CO2 emissions, having literally taken money from the biggest airport and biggest airline in the country. So eco-friendly. Here's another thought. Maybe when you try to block bridges in the name of stopping petroleum-powered vehicles, don't do it while proudly displaying a bunch of PVC yoga mats made out of petroleum. Kinda looks a bit awkward. These morons are so far up their own backsides, they've prescribed themselves the power to decide who gets hospital treatment. They already stopped a man reaching his dying father's bedside, but they assure us they'll have conversations with ambulance crew about letting some people through. Possibly.
Now, there's a major hospital, isn't there, on Westminster Bridge? Are you worried about how it could impact patients or families trying to visit, their loved ones?
Well, I think it's about this understanding of the wider perspective. We have people on the bridges who can have conversations with people who are trying to get there, and there's potential of, if people really need to get there, about letting them through, possibly in that conversation, possibly.
Oh, I'm sorry, your son's bleeding profusely to death. Let's just check with Sebastian here to see if he's finished his Kundalini.
Possibly.
Extinction Rebellion. As you shut down main roads leading to London hospitals, I walked 20 minutes with someone who has cancer so they could get to hospital for a procedure as the car couldn't get through. 20 minutes might not sound long, but when you have cancer, it is. Thanks, Extinction Rebellion. As ever with these clowns, it's very much do as I say, not as I do. When it comes to their lifestyles, it's not about reducing carbon footprints on an individual level.
Do you have a TV at home?
I don't think that's relevant.
Do your kids use iPads and computers?
It's
yes
not
or no?
relevant to.
Can you answer these questions?
It's not relevant. It's really not about our individual carbon footprint.
But when it comes to what you're allowed to do, it's a completely different story.
So when Prince Harry said everyone's carbon footprint counts, every footprint counts.
It does.
He's wrong.
It does.
Oh, it does?
It does.
You said it doesn't.
It's really not about our individual carbon footprint.
Every footprint counts.
It does. It's really not about our individual carbon footprint.
And what about Extinction Rebellion as a group itself? It was founded by this guy. Listen to how reasonable he sounds.
We are going to force the governments to act, and if they don't, we'll bring them down and create a democracy fit for purpose. And yes, some may die in the process.
Excuse me?
We'll bring them down and some may die in the process.
See, I wasn't around in the 60s, but I thought hippies were all about peace, love and empathy. At what point did Extinction Rebellion go full Manson family cult?
Some may die in the process.
Listen to what Extinction Rebellion co-founder Stuart Basden says about the group. In his own words, Extinction Rebellion isn't about the climate. What's it about? Dismantling European civilization, ending the patriarchy, and demolishing the belief that heterosexuality is normal. Yeah, these are his words. This from a guy whose white guilt is so pervasive he's harassing his own family to send reparations to black families in America that share his surname. Yeah. Really. So according to the two founding members of Extinction Rebellion, it's about overthrowing governments, during which process some people might die.
Some may die.
And overthrowing the entire system of Western civilization, right down to the biological reality of heterosexuality as the normal default human breeding proclivity. And there you were thinking it was about recycling your jam jars. Who funds Extinction Rebellion? Despite claiming how completely transparent they are about this, some of the names of those who donate large amounts are kept secret. Oh, and they've raised nearly £1 million in just a few days. Still, someone's got to pay for all that MDMA. Extinction Rebellion's poster child is Greta Thunberg. Greta is our Lord and Saviour. She's the new Jesus Christ. She can do no wrong. Let the church bells ring. Got a few questions about her friends, though. Arnold Schwarzenegger, the dude who literally has a garage full of muscle cars and tanks. So eco-friendly. Prince Harry, the dude who took 4 private jet trips in 11 days to save the planet. No, to party at Elton John's mansion. So eco-friendly. Leonardo DiCaprio, the dude who took a private jet to pick up an environmental award. The dude who hangs out on 470-foot luxury yachts owned by billionaire Middle Eastern oil sheiks before going on people's climate marches. So eco-friendly.
Absolutely fucking not.
The most vehement opposition to Extinction Rebellion is from people aged 65 plus. Oh, who cares what they think? This is about future generations. This is about the climate kids. Really? Let's have a look at what the boomers have to say. Climate kids, when placing blame and pointing fingers, remember this. It was our generation that introduced recycling to keep up with the demand of consumption from your generation. When we were kids, the only fast food was at the local chippy and it came wrapped in newspaper, not in a polystyrene case. Our energy drink was Lucozade and it came in a glass bottle that we used to take back to the shop to recycle. We walked or biked to school or work and didn't ask mum or dad to drive us because it was raining and we didn't want to get wet for the 1,000 yards to the school gate. We had hand-me-down clothes and used a payphone if we needed to make a call. We remember power cuts on a regular basis and played board games or read by candlelight. Our homes had single glazed windows that would ice up in winter, and we shared our bedrooms that were so cold you could see your breath with our brothers or sisters. We didn't have central heating. Have you ever had to use someone else's bathwater after they had finished? We have. We didn't have TVs in our bedrooms left on standby 24 hours a day or mobile devices that have to be charged if the battery drops below 80%. Our holidays were in the UK in tents and not in Ibiza, and we didn't get there by plane. It is you that is the mass consumer that demand the latest phones, fashion, sunny holidays, fast food and transportation. So point the finger of blame at yourselves, you self-indulgent, deluded, needy, greedy, ignorant, unapologetic, rude, selfish generation. Feel that boomer resentment. Then there's the claim that all this is academic because we're in a climate emergency.
This is an emergency.
Bullshit! It's all bullshit. There are real environmental issues. Global warming isn't one of them. The hockey stick chart used as the foundation for the IPCC's report grossly exaggerated temperature increases. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration has been repeatedly caught altering previous temperature data to make warming look more pronounced. During the ClimateGate scandal, it was revealed that scientists deliberately altered data to, quote, hide the decline in temperatures. Over 50 years ago, climate change activist Paul Ehrlich warned in his book, The Population Bomb, quote, in the 1970s and 1980s, hundreds of millions of people will starve to death in spite of any crash programs embarked upon now. Sound familiar?
I am not sure that I'm going to be able to feed my children in years to come.
In the 1970s, we were bombarded with waves of hysteria about a coming climate crisis. What was causing the crisis? Global cooling. Newsweek, April 28, 1975. The cooling world. Unless we did something drastic, falling temperatures were going to cause mass starvation. Again, sound familiar?
I am not sure that I'm going to be able to feed my children in years to come.
And you know why back then they were all fear-mongering about global cooling? Because after World War II, temperatures across the planet substantially dropped, even as CO2 emissions substantially increased. Wait, it's almost as if there's no actual connection between the two and that the sun is the real driver of climate, given that sun activity is far more closely aligned with temperature fluctuations. Surely not. It's almost as if there have been far warmer periods in the history of the planet which actually resulted in a thriving ecosystem. Surely not. It's almost as if ice core samples prove temperature leads CO2 increases and not the other way round. Surely not.
The new study to be presented by U.S. Navy researchers later this week warns it could happen in as little as 7 years. 7 years from now.
On this one, he predicted, as you heard there, that the Arctic ice cap would have vanished by now, really. But satellite images, oh dear, they show that it's got thicker.
Oh, but the science is settled. Really? I guess that's why you literally have to force university students to attend mandatory classes on climate change. But it's not indoctrination, honest. Climate activist. The science is settled. Me. Cool, that means we can defund your research since it's settled. Climate activist. Defund the... what? It's almost as if all the investment firms, NGOs and billionaire elitists fear-mongering about climate change are the same people who stand to make gargantuan, jaw-dropping profits off of climate change because they own and are all invested in the carbon trading mechanisms that deal with carbon offsets. The combination of global warming and growing environmental consciousness is creating a potentially huge market in the trading of pollution emission credits. BlackRock Capital with the Climate Finance Partnership, HSBC, JP Morgan Chase and Citi, all part of the Blended Finance Action Task Force, and they state there are, quote, profits to be had in, quote, climate-related sectors. Rothschild Australia and E3 International launching the Carbon Ring Consortium. 23 multinational corporations at the G8 Climate Change Roundtable, including Ford, Toyota, British Airways, BP and Unilever, who all called for these carbon trading systems to be established right at the beginning. Rothschild, HSBC, JP Morgan Chase, BP, Ford. Wow, it just sounds so grassroots, doesn't it? The only impact Extinction Rebellion is having on the environment is to make people who care about the environment look absolutely stupid. Even if you think global warming is a real issue, their solutions are just utterly ludicrous.
To reach your target, you'd have to stop all flying. Aviation would come to an end.
Possibly. I mean,
by 2025.
They could be directing thousands of people to clean up beaches, to plant trees. You know, real environmentalism. What are they doing instead? Antagonizing ordinary people, depriving the working class of employment, and clowning around like it's the last day of Woodstock. There are real environmental issues, but global warming isn't one of them. Man-made climate change is a monumental top-down fraud. It's a ploy to prevent the third world from developing, to keep it mired in poverty. It's a huge tax scam to redistribute wealth from the poor and the middle class to the 1%. And these self-satisfied, sanctimonious, useful idiots, whether they know it or not, are fully complicit.